not that I have to feel this feeling all the time, but I know, and there's no mistake about it, that God was talking to me and that what God did was real and was true. And it was awesome. There was no other way to explain that. The other thing I did as well immediately was I knew I needed a spiritual accountability partner. That was one thing I've heard about. I needed to talk to someone who I can talk to on a daily basis, meet on a weekly basis. And so I called my buddy Anglin. Anglin was a guy who he goes to the First Church with Renee. We were in school together, business school. He was in my business fraternity, and I had invited him to church, and he had accepted Christ, and he ended up going on and he's helping over there with her and her church and a congregation. And so I called him up, and I explained to him my transformation that I felt that I just had with Christ. I explained that this is the way I'm going to be living my life from now on, and I need someone who I can talk to on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, who I can share with. I have other mentors I can do that with, Chris Johnson and some other people's here, but you need to have someone that's almost like on the same spiritual level and you can grow together with. Because in Matthew 18:20 it says, where two or more are gathered, there I will be also. And it's not shooting the breeze. We're talking about fellowship and sharing what God's doing in your life. And he's going to be there and he's going to bless that. And of course, England, being the good guy he was, he's all over it. So we've been doing that since then. We've been meeting on a weekly basis. The next thing God was, so here's where everything really starts to roll. God really started, okay, so I did that. And then what do you think that little voice in the back of my head has been saying all my life about calling, God's calling in my life? It gets louder and louder and louder. And then I'm like, okay, I feel like I got this calling to ministry. I need to talk to somebody about this. So I went to, I was in West Sacramento, all of a sudden just felt led. I'm going to go right back to Pastor Bruce's church. I'm going to go talk to him. My youth pastor a long time ago. But he has kind of an interesting connection with my family because he knew my real dad and my mom when they all went to Fairfield a long time ago. So he kind of has some roots in my family. So I went and talked to him. And I took him out to lunch, and I shared with him how I was feeling. And I asked him, I said, I'm just really trying to get clear on this because I don't want to be just super energetic about everything and just going forward because, well, that's my personality. That's what I do. Blindly just jump in. Let's do this. And then, but I want to get clarity, God. I want to know. So I asked Bruce, I said, how did you know when you were being called to ministry? What was it that your calling was like? And he shared with me two things. He said, one, he was a plumber. His business, he owned his own business. He's like, for the last year, they were going bankrupt. It was going down the tube. Two, he's been feeling for the last year or so, whenever he was in church, he said he kept envisioning himself on the pulpit. And he's like, I just felt like I had this calling to preach. And I just had this calling. And so here's why that's so amazing. So, do you think every pastor has that same exact way of being called? That they envision themselves on a pulpit? I don't think so. I think if you polled 100 pastors on how they came to ministry and how God called them and what they made a decision on, I highly doubt that's the main theme on all that. So why is this amazing? Because growing up and then in this time frame, I was starting to envision myself on the pulpit. I was starting to see myself doing those things. And then at the same time, I was working harder in my job than I'd ever worked in 5 years. And my numbers were the worst they've ever been in 5 years. Ever. And it was like God saying, hey, we need to talk. So I was like, you're right, we do. And that's how God works. He sent me to the one person in my life who had the exact same, or at least very similar calling to confirm, because I was praying for clarity. And that's what he gave me. I think that's pretty amazing that the person I went and talked to, I could have talked to Pastor Wayne right up. I don't even know. I never even asked him what his calling was. That was good enough for me just hearing what Pastor Bruce had to say to clarify that I knew I was being called. But then, being the dumb sheep that we are, right, I said, God, I need more clarity. So I did. I said, God, I just need to pray a little bit more about this. And Pastor Bruce also encouraged that. He's like, pray about it some more. Pray and, seek his wisdom. He'll seek his guidance. He'll show you. So I was like, God, can I get a little more clarity on what you think on this ministry thing? So the next day I called, I just felt led out of the blue. I haven't called this guy in probably a couple of years. I called Adam Romero. I don't know when the last time I called him on the phone was. He answers the phone, and Adam, he goes over to First Church as well, but we grew up in a youth group together. He's Carlos' brother, and actually he's sitting over there. What's up, Adam? So I call him up out of the blue. I'm just like, I felt led. I needed to call him. I thought maybe I was calling him to encourage him to share everything in my life. And I said, hey, Adam, we need to talk. And he goes, okay, can we talk on the phone? I'm like, well, no, I'd really think we should talk face to face. You can see, you hear it almost immediately. What's this about? No, it's about God. I just need, okay, cool, yeah. We'll talk. Yeah. So we ended up meeting that following Friday, and when I talked to him, I thought, like I said, I was going to be encouraging him in his faith or something. I didn't really understand what it was I was going to be talking about. And we started sharing. I shared everything that went on with me up until that point that I've shared with you guys. And he was like, man, that's amazing. I'm going to pray for you and stuff. And he's like, I have something I need to share with you. Oh, okay, what's up? And he goes, the other day, he works now in a job where he has to travel 3 to 4 hours to get to his job. And he works 4 days a week, and he comes home on the weekends. He has to stay over there. So that's kind of a really tough situation for him as an individual to be in. And he said, I felt so lonely on my ride back. He's like, I just felt alone. I was listening to Christian radio, and I just felt alone. He's like, but then I had this, I remembered your sermon you preached. I was like, my sermon I preached? He's like, yeah, in the youth group. And he's like, when you preached about the sparrow, and how when you preach how God even knows the sparrow and every little thing that he does. And he's like, I just felt so good. I just felt so just peace come over me. And I was like, oh, hold on. Wait, you're talking about 18 years ago when I preached a sermon? You mean yesterday, the day before, that whatever that was, whenever that day was, that's when that talked to you? And that I was like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And it hit me. I was like, God, there's the clarity again. He's like, see? You wanted clarity? I just gave you more clarity. I told you to go call Adam. And that's the thing, though. See, if you're not in tune with God, I don't know. If I hadn't been at that step, I probably wouldn't have just called Adam because I felt like, I should call Adam. My mind, I'm like, well, I got other things I got to do. And I called him. And if I had put off just a little bit with Bruce, who knows? I wouldn't have called him. And then God has amazing ways of working. So, one more time I prayed for clarity. Like I said, it's like one of those things. Are you sure? Are you positive about this? It's a really big step. So I said, that was Friday. Saturday evening, I prayed, God, I know what you're saying. I see what you're doing. Maybe a little bit more, just a little bit more. So Sunday morning, I told you guys about the devotional that I purchased, and I've been going through the Purpose-Driven Life and the devotional, and I haven't been reading that devotional every day. But I just go to the calendar day whenever I felt led to, and I open it up and I read it. Well, that Sunday morning, I felt like it was May 6th. That Sunday morning, May 6th, to read it. I opened up May 6th. Being that's fresh in my mind about answering the call, that's what exactly, that's what it was titled. And that's what I was thinking about, like God adding clarity. And it was titled Answering the Call. That May 6th title, Answering the Call. And then it said, if it is truly a call of God on your life to follow him, it will never go away. Remember this, when God, I'm quoting right out of the book, that day, when God calls you to follow him, he will keep reminding you until you take some kind of action. I'm like, okay, I finally got it. I got it. I'm good. I'm definitely going to be a minister, God. I will do what you want me to do because I know that's the calling you have in my life. Okay? So why do I share these things with you? Because sure, that verse or that little quote will mean different things to different people based on what you are, where you're at with God. And those don't say exactly you have to go to ministry, whatever. But you have to be sensitive to what God's showing you. And there are not three different coincidences in 1 week. And I'm not going to. Satan would like you to think that and pull the wool over your eyes and think that. But that's not what happened. You have to be sensitive to what God's prompting and what God's leading you to do because that's how he talks to you. You take a step and he shows you. And then you take another, and then he gives you the next thing and reveals, this is what you need. You take that step, then he shows you another thing. That's how God works. That's how he leads you with the Spirit. He's not going to audibly talk. Well, he might audibly talk to some of you. I'm not going to discount that because there are times in the Bible when that's happened. So, but for me, it's prompting you with the Spirit, being sensitive to hear that and going with it. And I do apologize if this is going to go long because I'm trying to get everything in because I think you guys need to hear this. So I shared with Chris that same day, Sunday afternoon. I said, Chris, this is what's going on in my life. I was like, I feel called to the ministry. I feel like it's important I share with another believer because the Bible says you need that one to hold yourself accountable to because God, then other believers can hold you accountable to that. And so I shared that with him. That Monday, well, let me take a step back. Actually, the next day was Monday, I was wrestling with, okay, when should I take this step now? I've agreed I need to take this step, but I'm not really sure when I need to do this, because I've got a job. I've got a good job. Maybe I can just get to schooling, and then while I'm working in my job and I have that free time, I can do my Bible college and just kind of go through that. I mean, that would be a perfect plan. I think that would be great. But I was wrestling with when I should really talk about it, and I had just prayed because God's answering my prayers for clarity, because that's pretty much the main thing in my life about asking for. So I asked for some clarity. And so this is what happened, because I have a habit now of praying on Christian radio. And see, God talks through so many different avenues of your life. If you open up these channels and you listen, God has to reach you through channels that are godly. He can't reach you through channels that are secular, although he does use some secular things to help to prompt you or to get you to think. But you have to have some Christian Avenue channels. What did I do? I just got onto I-5 from Highway 12 and turned on K-Love, my Christian radio I was listening to. There's a guy talking. He says, have you heard about the parable of the farmer? I was like, no. I mean, I interact with my radio sometimes. And so I've never heard it. And he says this. He says, the farmer who watches the weather on when to sow will never sow. And the farmer who watches the clouds to reap will never reap. The time is now. Are you kidding me? Chills, my hair, everything standing up. And I mean, I kind of get that same sense right now. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. I don't need to ask 3 more times for clarity, God. I already did that before. I understand what you're saying. So I picked up the phone and I called Wayne. And I said, hey, can we meet this week sometime? And he's like, yeah, sure. And we ended up meeting. And so we set up a meeting for Thursday. Because that, to me, in my mind, okay, now I'm going to my pastor. I'm going to talk to him, and I'm going to say, let him share everything that's going on in my life and find out where do I need to go? What do I need to do? So literally, I want to share with you something how also God works. That same day I get home, on my way home, I get off of I-5, Highway 12 exit. There's a guy with a sign. I don't remember exactly what the sign said because I did what homeless people do. Don't make eye contact, look straight ahead. Right? I mean, I don't really participate a whole lot in helping people out, especially when I think I've seen that guy several times before right there. And so I pulled out on the light. As soon as I did that, what did I feel? God saying, you need to go share your testimony with that guy, and you need to go take him to lunch. I'm like, really? No, that's what went in my head. That's the ideas that came to my head. And that's God convicting me, prompting me with the Spirit. And that's what I thought in my mind that I needed to do. But I did have a prompting, a conviction that I need to do something. So if you picture going down Highway 12, taking the U-turn, there's Flying J right there, going back down. And then as I'm going back down, the guy's walking this way. And I passed him. I was like, oh, well, I couldn't stop right there. And then I was like, well, the next U-turn I have is going all the way down to Guard Road and back. So then I went all the way down Guard Road, made a U-turn, came back. And I couldn't find the guy. Never did. But I felt amazing. Because why? Because I told God that I was going to, God knew in my heart I was going to do that. God knew that. And I just felt amazing. I was like, why am I feeling so good right now? This is really weird. But God knew that. So fast forward the next day.